Johannesburg Emergency Services personnel suspect illegal electricity connections may have led to the blaze that gutted an abandoned building in Jeppestown, that's in central Johannesburg. 4 people have died, with 3 others being treated for their wounds. Let's get you an update on the incident. Bring in the Human Settlements MMC in the city of Johannesburg, Mlungisi Mabaso, who's with us via our video link this morning. MMC, thanks for your time. It's great to have you on the program. Let me just start by saying apologies in advance if I have to cut you at any point of our discussion. We're expecting the president to take to the podium at any moment now at a conference taking place in Midrand. But I'm sure even after what took place this weekend, you too weren't surprised, because the warnings had always been there that something like this could happen again.
Well, thank you very much. Greetings to yourself and the viewers. Well, the reality is that with the challenges that we have encountered in the city of Johannesburg, these incidents, are always expected. But we appreciate the response by our emergency service because they are, able to respond within the record time, so that we try and save lives of those that would have been affected, and also that the city manager has indicated that the report, which is meant to address these challenges that our residents faces on daily basis in the inner city, is almost ready, and that report will also be presented. But we have also requested our residents, to work with us and to assist us, in keeping, especially this hijacking of buildings in the inner city, because there are people now who actually takes advantage of the vulnerability of our residents in the inner city, because, the accommodation in the inner city is expensive, and they use that to their advantage, and charge them, amount of monies, and not pay for the services in the municipality, in the buildings that are not compliant. Because if you get into these buildings, you then realize that emergency exits are not functioning properly. There are no fire extinguishers installed within these buildings, and it poses, a serious danger for those that occupy these properties. But we are actually happy with the response and the progress that the city is actually making in addressing this challenge. But we also, going to make sure that we invite all the key stakeholders in the city of Johannesburg, so that they are able to bring in their resources for us to deal with the issues of human settlements within the inner city.
The onus, of course, cannot be on desperate residents who, of course, are going to go for the best offer that's available to them to prevent something like this from happening. The irony is that this building is called Enkaneni, according to some reports, because people who live there say that it's known for being a space where, even after being evacuated, people are able to move back in. It speaks to a much deeper systemic problem, which is hard to digest, because the warnings have always been there, and we've been told for a long time that this can actually be avoided.
You see, some other issues in the inner city requires the law enforcement agency to enforce and to make arrests, so that we are able to curb, these the problems that exist. Emergency service personnel yesterday, during the briefing, they indicated that while they were trying to gain access to extinguish the fire, there were people who were heavily armed that were, running out of the building. So it tells you, the challenge that we have in these buildings in the inner city. And that's why we have always been calling on our law enforcement agency to assist us, in dealing with this criminal element, that has become a daily occurrence now in the inner city. We do need to protect our residents. We do need the law enforcement agency to work with us, but we also do need to have development in the inner city, because part of the program or the approach that will assist us in keeping these criminal activities in the inner city is by us having to turn the inner city into the construction site. And we are hoping that the national government, through its commitments, and the provincial government will be able to convert the inner city into a construction site, so that all these criminal elements are eliminated through those programs.
Of course, law enforcement has a role to play, but what role is the city of Johannesburg playing in the meantime?
Well, the Department of Human Settlements, for example, each and every financial year, we acquire properties in the inner city. We convert them into low-cost, affordable, and social housing, so that we are able to accommodate our residents. So 2 minutes away from that building which caught fire. We have 2 properties that we have acquired. One of the buildings ready for occupation. The other building we have already started allocating. And there are other buildings. I mean, we demolished the Kazene building not so long ago for the purposes of the redevelopment as part of our approach and intervention as the Department of Human Settlements in dealing with the issues of human settlements within the inner city. But the reality is that for you to make an impact in the inner city, you need to acquire more properties. You need to move in a form of a precinct development. But how we are doing it currently, it does not, in fact, yield, any positive outcomes, because we are acquiring one building, in a financial year, which is not sufficient in trying to address the issues that the residents of the inner city are facing.
So why can't that be expedited? What's the loop, the bottleneck, I beg your pardon, in trying to speed up that process?
But I mean, it speaks to the resources that we have at our disposal. So as the city, we cannot actually, procure more buildings, in a financial year because of the monies that we receive from the treasury. So we work and plan based on what we have at our disposal, and that's why we appreciated the commitment which was made by the Premier to say the provincial government is going to put in more focus and more resources in rejuvenating the inner city. And there is also a commitment from the national government as well to say they are going to assist us in acquiring more buildings so that we are able to develop most of these buildings that are in fact are built buildings in the inner city. So if we can get in fact more resources from the national government and the provincial government, then it will be easier for us to procure and acquire more buildings so that we are able to convert them into low cost and affordable housing.
In many ways, MMC, it sounds like the city itself is saying it can't really do much about the status quo as it exists. And I suppose the difficulty with that is that it feels like all of us are just waiting for the next tragedy before there's material change in the inner city and before we can finally get to the root causes of what's taking place there.
Well, I think because the city manager and the office of the executive mayor yesterday committed that the report that they've been working on since the last incident of Usindiso will be ready in the next 2 weeks, and they will be able to present, the approach and how the city is planning to deal with these challenges in the inner city. I think we will wait for that, but we have also committed ourselves that we will adhere to that program so that we are able to play our role as the human settlements. But remember, you also need the economic aspect of it, so that while people are residing in the inner city, but they also become the participants in the economy within the inner city itself. So your economic development will also be required to play its role. The law enforcement agencies, they also have a role to play. I mean, the Home Affairs, they need to invest more and put in more resources and focus in the inner city to deal with the illegal migration and those that are undocumented in the inner city. Because even if we, procure and acquire properties, we also, get confronted by undocumented foreign nationals that we do not have competency to deal with. So all those key role players, they have a role to play. But I think the report that will be presented in the next 2 weeks will be able to present a clear directive of what, each department and each institution will have to play in terms of assisting in addressing all these challenges that our residents faces on a daily basis within the inner city.
All right. You'll forgive the cynicism that exists around what's taking place, MMC, but I'm sure you'll agree much of what you've said has already been said already. And I suspect the concern now for a lot of people is that you and I will have the conversation next time when another building goes up in flames. The Joburg MMC is Mlungisi Mabaso, MMC for Human Settlements. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Really concerning what's taking place in the inner city, and it doesn't seem the situation is going to change at least anytime soon.